Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am back for my LPL Week 4 overview, analysis, and at the end, my power rankings. This is the first LPL video of the summer split. If you haven't checked out some of the other content that I have made coming up to this, of course, I am back now. You can check out my update video and some of the other videos I posted this week on the LEC, the LCS, and of course, NA Academy. A playlist to all of those will be linked up in the iCard here. And I'm excited to be back. I don't want to waste too much time talking about things in this intro because the LPL is, of course, the biggest task of the week to go over in one video, what with there being, 7,000 games. So I don't want to waste too much time. Let's go ahead and jump right into... Well, before we do that, actually, I should probably catch you guys up since I won't be going over weeks 1 to 3 in terms of how I viewed the teams and, the roster changes, etc., etc. I should at least up on the screen right now show you what my power rankings are going into this week. I'm not going to talk about it too much because we'll be getting to a lot of the teams and kind of their form as we go through this week and as they start playing games, as we can start discussing the roster. But just so you guys have an idea of where my head is at with these teams going into week 4 here, this is what the power rankings look like before this week of games. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into our first series of week 4, and that was OMG, oh my god, taking on LGD Gaming. A battle of two teams that have definitely struggled out the gate. Neither is a superstar team, but OMG probably expected to be a little bit better, and they do pick up this one 2-0. Which is good. This is what we expect from them. Shanji had a phenomenal series here. He is the player of the series here for OMG. He pulls out the Shyvana top in Game 2. It looks really, really good, but he was also phenomenal in Game 1 on that Sejuani. Really, there was not much that LGD could do. His CC chains, his ability to just absorb all of that damage was really, really clutch. And then in Game 2, not only was he weirdly tanky, his build was tanky, but it still did a lot of damage. The Demonic Embrace was a great build here, and he was able to pick off quite a few people in team fights as well. So Shanji very much deserving the player of the series here for OMG, but they take both of these games relatively cleanly, not too much to talk about. I'm glad to see the spirit of good going lives on. Cream has had a little bit of a rough start to spring, and so is Abel. These are two players that I am really high on. If you have followed the history of this channel, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Cream, and I really think that he could be one of the better mids in the LPL one day, but he's had a rough start. He's regressed, I think, a little bit in terms of being able to play non-assassins, so hopefully he can kind of get back to that form that we really saw him being super proactive even when he wasn't on assassins. He was just super confident in spring, and I think some of that went away when they started to lose towards the back half. But as for LGD, this isn't a very good team. They've already been switching up their roster quite a bit. They've had Yeji in the mid lane, switched it up to Haichao. Neither seem to be very good. They'll be switching it up later in the week as well, so we'll get to that later. But Fearness is going to be my dud of the series here. He just had 2 games where he was pretty outclassed in the top lane. Really not much else to say there. A bad Mordekaiser game in Game 1. I assume that's to stop the Viego. I don't really know what else you're ulting in that circumstance, because Zeri just runs around. You never hit Zeri anyways, and then you versus Sejuani, who cares? So I don't know. And then the Ornn in Game 2 just wasn't able really to do much. The Shyvana pick was way more effective. So Fearness is going to be my dud of the game here, but overall OMG, meh. They look okay. I'm not convinced this is a top 10 playoff team or anything like that, but this is a good sign that they are at least moving in the right direction. You should be able to beat a team like LGD. And, for LGD, they're a bottom tier team. I'm not sure if they're absolutely at the bottom because they've kind of held tough with some better teams, but they still have not been able to pick up a lot of wins. So, it'll be interesting to see, what happens with LGD. Maybe they finally settle on a roster and they can get some synergy going between whoever they end up playing, but right now it's just not there. So, we'll see. I don't think either of these teams are super playoff teams, but it's good to see OMG picking up the win. Moving on to the second series here of day 1, we had a team that has surprised me, at least with how dominant they've been in summer so far. JD Gaming taking on TT Gaming, Thunder Talk Gaming, whatever you want to call them. JDG, predictably, takes them out. Although, game 2, they really should not have won. This was a pretty massive throw here from Thunder Talk, and we'll get into that. Game 1 was JDG all the way. Just generally a strong game here from pretty much everybody. 369 had a phenomenal game on that Gangplank. That champion can do so much damage when he's just, like, allowed to get his combos off. It's really, really disgusting. And then, of course, you still have Yuumi Zeri in the back. You have the Lissandra to kind of slow down somebody on this team. Probably the Viego, because he was the one who had the gold. But, yeah, not a good game in game 1 here from the Gwen. Just completely, Xiaosheng completely destroyed on the Gwen, generally. And then in game 2, TT actually had a lead for most of this game. And then, poof, gone. Zeri, Yuumi just takes over this late game. Zeri ends up with, like, definitely over 10 kills. Something absurd. An absolutely dominant performance from both Hope and Missing in game 2. Both of them played really, really well. And TT just isn't able to hang on, even though you have a super strong Viego on Beishuan. A good series from JDG. You know, they should be winning these 2-0, so it's not too surprising to see it, but it is good to see them be able to pull back from a deficit position and be able to reclaim a lead. Yes, it's, like I said, against a bad team, not even just one of the bad teams, like one of the worst teams, but still, you know, it's good to see it happen. Hope is going to be my player of the series. You could have given this to 369 as well. Like I said, that Gangplank game in game 1 was really good, but that game 2 from Hope was the best game of the series by far. He was kind of the big reason that they ended up winning that. In general, he has been such a phenomenal pickup for this JDG team. He really was the missing piece. Like, this team was kind of treading water, I think, at best with, I can't even remember who they had in at 80 carry right now, but they were treading water at best before Hope got here. They bring in Hope here from EDG's bench, and he is like a huge upgrade. He's a potential top 3 to 4 80 carry in the LPL right now. Like, he was in summer. If he played the whole split, he would have gotten all pro votes, but obviously he didn't. And he was in spring, I should say, and he will be in summer. He's just been too good to not be. He's been really, really phenomenal on this team. So if Kanavi and Yigao, I don't want to take that away from them. And like I said, 369 had a really good game, but JDG's just kind of clicking right now. As for TT, as for Thunder Talk, this team kind of sucks. Xiaosheng is going to be my dud of the series here. His game 1 on Gwen was, like, atrociously bad. It was not even playable. Like, he got obliterated by the Gangplank. And in game 2, he was also pretty irrelevant on the Sejuani. Not that Sejuani can do much from behind, but I guess they weren't behind, right? This comp should be able to close it out. You have Ezreal and Seraphine for, like, ridiculous amounts of poke. Lissandra should just be able to shut off the Ahri, and then Viego should be able to take over the team fight, but they weren't able to do that. I want to shout out Beishuan, because he's actually been really good this year on a team that has been really bad. And, you know, we're going to start seeing a lot of the free Beishuan, I think, Reddit threads pretty soon, because, you know, put him on a better team. If you switch, like, him and Hacker, for say, you know, just for example, on Ultra Prime, I think that, you know, Ultra Prime all of a sudden becomes, like, a much better team. And so, you know, it's unfortunate that he's stuck here on TT Gaming, but, you know, he had a good series here. He was kind of the saving grace in game 1, and then he was a big reason why they had a lead in game 2. So, unfortunate they couldn't put it away. Yucal has just regressed so much, in my opinion, from what he used to be. Like, you can see the name Yucal, and you can be like, oh, you know, they have a good mid laner. He has not been. Very similar to how I felt about Maple the last few years. Like, Yucal has just been not good here in the LPL since he came over in the middle of spring. He was alright on the Lissandra here, but at the end of the day, like, you can't pick Ryze. You just can't pick Ryze in 2022 right now. He is such a bad pick. He does absolutely nothing for your team. I get it, like, you know, Ryze is one of those staple pro picks that you're just going to see always, but I you know, not for me. But yeah, generally speaking, a good win for JDG. They needed to win this. Glad they won it 2-0. TT kind of had one of these games in their grasp against one of the better teams in the league. It's not like the worst series they've had all year. It's just one of the best teams versus one of the worst. Pretty predictable how this one turned out. Moving on to day 2 here of week 4 LPL action. We kicked it off with Victory 5 taking on Team WE. Victory 5 has looked so good at the start of summer here. Obviously, they were so good in spring in the regular season as well, but they've actually been missing their best player and reigning MVP for the entirety of summer so far, and they've looked arguably better. You know, I'm not going to say that. I'm not trying to make any point there, but just it's really interesting to see how good this team has looked, the pieces essentially surrounding everybody. Really no changes here to the Victory 5 roster. Like I said, Rookie is currently, I believe his father passed away and he went back to Korea. And so he has to quarantine for a bit just to make sure that there's no problems there. And, you know, obviously condolences there. But Dream has filled in pretty much seamlessly. There's really no other way to put it. Dream is actually like a top 5-6 mid laner in the LPL. And he's just kind of sitting here on V5's bench because he has filled in here, and he's been actually phenomenal. He's really just been what Rookie was for this team. And I don't want to say that he's better or anything, but Rookie's been talking about retirement after the season and everything. I definitely think if Dream wants to stick around after this season, and if Rookie, you know, ends up saying, like, this is my last year, this is as seamless of a replacement as I think you could probably get. Dream has been phenomenal. He's not my player of the series here, though. That's going to go to PP God. The year of the PP is in session. Him and Fodic had a good spring, but they were inconsistent. There are some games that they would absolutely take over, and some games that they would lose for Victory 5. They've been much better here in summer so far. They've looked really consistent. Yes, their schedule hasn't been particularly difficult up till this point, but they've still looked really strong, and it's something worth noting. PP God, like I said, is my player of the series here. He was phenomenal, especially in that game 1 on the Nautilus. Those engages were just unstoppable. Pretty much destroyed the game from minute 1, on the entire map, I should say. The other member of this team that played really well in the series was Xiaolong Bao. Obviously, him and Karsa splitting time in the jungle. He played phenomenal. His game 2 here on the Xinjiao, a pick that I honestly don't even think is that good right now, was really dominant. He just took over the game, was way better than Beishang, and overall just looked really good. I'm not going to say that Xiaolong Bao is, like, better than Karsa right now, but I think at the very least they're close. If I had to pick which one I would play, it's tough. I think Xiaolong Bao is a better player. Like, I think he's better mechanically, but, you know, obviously Karsa offers a lot more macro and a lot more decision-making. That's always been one of his best traits, or at least what we know. Obviously, there's only so much we can know about that stuff, but from what we've seen, so whichever one you go with, whatever. You know, I think both can be really good. Xiaolong Bao's kind of been used in that extra role against, I think, a little bit worse teams to kind of just style, because they know that they probably don't need the macro as much, but Karsa seems to get deployed against the tougher competition. And so it'll be interesting to see how it goes throughout the rest of the season for V5. I don't think it matters. Both of them are phenomenal. Rich has been really good. What happened to Rich? He went from being one of the worst top laners in the LCK to being, what was he, first team All-Pro, the best top laner in the LPL last split. So, kind of crazy. Victory 5's just kind of clicking on all cylinders. As for WE, this team sucks. There's really no other way to put it. They've been switching out their roster a bit throughout the year. Their mid, ADC, and support all have gone through changes. Shanks has kind of settled in here in the mid lane. Shanks and GA have been splitting time. GA just doesn't seem to have it much anymore, but Shanks has definitely regressed from the 2021 form we saw, where he was actually really good in the playoffs. They're trying to find an AD carry that doesn't suck. They're failing at the moment. They have Jing and SMLZ. SMLZ, by the way, coming out of retirement, or at least coming out of not playing, to play here on this WE team. He's not been good. Jing wasn't good in spring. He has not been good in summer. You've been switching out Kadaya and Heal, formerly known as Reheal, here in the support position. They've kind of settled on Heal, and he's been whatever. Like, this WE team has a lot of players, and none of them really seem to be holding up. I was a huge fan of Beishang last year. I thought he was really good on the WE team that was good, but he has not been good this year. I'm not exactly sure if he's just a fair weather jungler. We've definitely seen that across pretty much every region in the past, of some junglers just play well when you have a good team around them and play bad when you don't. Those risks sometimes pay off, and sometimes, like, they don't have the ability to just be the sole good point of a team. I'm not sure if Beishang is that, but he has not been good this year. And then Biu has just been awful. He was awful in spring. He's been awful in summer. There's really no other way to put it. He's just not been a good League of Legends player. I think we all could have seen that coming. Shanks is going to be my dud of the series here. he accomplished nothing while dying 1,000 times. 0-4 on Corki and then 0-5 on Lissandra is just kind of whatever. Like, what is even the point? But they kind of got absolutely demolished in both of these games. So you could give this to anybody. Nobody on this team played well. Jing and SMLG played really bad, both of them in their respective games. Beishang, died a lot on the Lee Sin, accomplishing very little. Like, you could really give this to anyone. I give it to Shanks because it felt like he should have had at least some impact and genuinely had zero. So, WE not looking too good from this, but Victory 5 looking real good. Looking real good. Moving on to the second series here of day 2, we had LNG Esports taking on TES, Top Esports. Top continues their run of looking really good. I want to laugh this up a little bit of... people were really mad when I had Top Esports as the second best team in the LPL going into spring. And, that looks pretty good right now because they look pretty freaking good. They are just so talented. Like, at some point, this roster just has to work because they're so good. And you know who embodies being just unfairly good? Knight. Knight is pretty unfairly good. I think we can all agree on that at this point. He's my player of the series pretty easily. He was awesome here. I mean, that Ari game in game 2, like, good luck stopping that. That beats any team in the world. Like, this, you play like that on Ari, that beats any team in the world. That's my opinion. And Knight looked really good here. Jackie Love also had a really good series. I know I'm kind of back and forth on Jackie Love here on the channel. It's because when Jackie Love takes these risks, and when they work out, he's the best AD carry in the world. Like, I don't mean that. That's not hyperbole. I really don't mean that as hyperbole. When he is on, and when his plays are working, and when he, everything's going for him, he is the best AD carry in the world. When they're not, he can lose your team the game by himself. And he's had moments like that this year already. But this was a game where, he looked like the best AD carry in the world in this one. He was really dominant, especially on that Kog'Maw in game 1. A very fun Kog'Maw game. Kog'Maw Lulu, a lane I want to see more of. Maybe I don't want to see more of it because it's really good, but it's a lane that we should be seeing more of because it is really strong if you do find the right comp around it. I really love it with a Galio Sejuani, and then you have Lee Sin to make plays. Love that draft. But just generally, a really fun series here from Top. Looking really good. Everybody on the team looking really good, but most notably Knight and Jackie Love. As for LNG, you want to hope for more, but this is a really good team that you are going into. Obviously, losing to Top 2 games in a row isn't like the end of the world, but this really was like mid-gap, jungle gap a bit. Tian had a really good series as well. I didn't point that out, but Tarzan did not. Tarzan's my dud of the series here. He's not had a particularly great summer so far. Definitely something I hope to see improved. Doanbee's had some really good performances. This was not one of them. He just got outclassed in both games, really, by Knight, which is not a great thing to see, but also, it's Knight. Like, what are you going to do? I get it, like, Doanbee is Doanbee as well, but, like, Knight is Knight. Like, he's the best mid laner, arguably, in the world. So, Doanbee is, he's been good. I don't want this series to kind of sway opinion that he's kind of been meh this year. I think he's actually been one of the better players in the LPL for the majority of 2022. This was just kind of a rough series for him. And then Light and Awandi had like no impact. Awandi obviously has been swapped out for Lumao a couple times, but I think they pretty much settled that Awandi's the better player, which he is. Awandi's also much more comfortable, in my opinion, on playing enchanters. Playing like actual supports and not engaged supports. That's Lumao's specialty. It's always been Lumao's specialty. The metas that Lumao has been really strong in have been the ones where engaged supports are kind of necessary, but this is not one of them. And so I definitely see Awandi being the better player generally, but it just didn't work out in this series. Overall, these two teams are good. LNG definitely has some question marks for me. They haven't looked quite as dominant as I want them to. They have some stuff to prove if they want to be like a top 4 to 5 team in the LPL, which obviously they want to be and they have the talent to be. They have quite a bit to prove in order for me to really believe that. There are a couple teams like that right now. Them and BLG, I think, are in a very similar spot. But, yeah, really good win for Top. The top 3 in the LPL look pretty obvious to me. Pretty competent. Of, like, RNG, TES, and JDG just very much feel like the 3 best teams in the LPL right now. Top Esports have definitely earned being in that conversation. So it'll be interesting to see, if they can continue their winning ways. But this team is just firing on all cylinders right now. Moving on to day 3 here, we kick that off with a match between two teams that I think are underperforming what a lot of people expected from them. Rare Atom taking on FPX. FPX picking up a 2-0 win. They're 0-5. This is their first series win of the year, and that might be the most misleading record in the world right now. I can imagine there are a lot of people out there that are talking about FPX being hyper overrated and this team sucks and they have no business, even being in playoffs or one of the bottom 5 teams or whatever. I couldn't disagree with that more. I don't think this is their first series of the year, I think, that isn't against like a top 5 to 6 team. Their schedule has been so ridiculously brutal to start off the year. This is their first breather. And they dismantle Rare Atom. Like, they are just like clearly the better team. I still think this team has playoff expectations. I know you probably saw in my power rankings that I had them just outside of the playoffs. If I had been making videos, it would have been me saying, all right, like, I get it. Like, I still do believe that this team is going to be top 8 or so, but you have to prove it. Like, you just have to win something. You have to beat somebody lower than you for me to believe it. And this is what I needed to see. This is exactly what I needed to see. LWX is going to be my player of the series here. He finally had a breakout game in summer here. I thought he was really good in spring. He was kind of the driving force for this roster in spring. Him and Clid, I think both had a lot of impact, not only on this series, but I think they're going to be kind of the main focus points of this team for the rest of the year. Both of them played really, really well here. You could give the player of the series to either. I gave it to LWX just because I thought he carried a little bit harder, but Clid was kind of the one who was facilitating a lot of that carrying. Obviously, you bring in Care here in the mid lane. I don't know if it's an upgrade or a downgrade. He has not been particularly great in their losses, but, he also is certainly not the focal point of this team. This team wants to play through bot lane, and when it doesn't play through bot, it wants to play through top. Xiaolao, who, he's here. He's not going to be playing for much longer, because Summit is going to come in later in this week, which we will get to, but, when this team doesn't want to play through bot, which they pretty much always do, they want to play through top, so Care just kind of has to be that more supportive mid laner. He accomplished that in this series for sure on the Galio and then on the Sylas. But really good series here from Clid. Really good series here from LWX. Hang played well as well. They have very good synergy. It's just about, making sure that they get the resources in order to be able to carry. As for Rare Atom, this was a playoff team in spring. I know. I don't believe it either with how they're playing right now. They are bad. iBoy was awful, dude. Like, dud of the series easily. This is like one of the worst series of the year for anybody in the LPL. A really, 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 really not good look for iBoy. Obviously, they picked the Twitch Yuumi in game 1 to try and go into Zeri. That is a pretty good counter pick, but it didn't work at all. Not even a little bit. Zeri was able to take over that game thanks to pretty constant jungle attention from the Jarvan, and then iBoy just kind of running it. And then the Jinx game was almost as bad. Like, another just really bad game. Really not much to talk about. iBoy looking really, really not good. I don't want to use the term washed because, again, it's just one series, but it really has been all split long. The iBoy has looked like the worst AD carry in the LPL, or one of them, like, just not good. Nobody else in this team really, like, stunned me in terms of positivity. Cube was pretty bad. Leon was at least trying to make plays, but, this team was so far back that it was never really close. Like, FPX just had both games in complete control from the beginning. Outlook-wise, FPX, I do think, is a playoff team. I know they're 1-5. I know I probably sound like a psychopath for saying that, but FPX does look like a playoff team to me, and Rare Atom does not. They look like a bottom-tier team, like a team that should be clumped up with LGD and, I'm trying to think, LGD and Invictus Gaming and, other teams. TT, Thunder Talk, I'm just trying to think of bad teams. WE. Like, they're more in that category than they are in, like, maybe they'll sneak into playoffs this split. Because, golly, they just look not good. So, hopefully they can turn it around. But FPX is going to be really, really excited to finally pick up their first win of the year in a pretty dominant fashion. Moving on to the second series here of day 3, we had Weibo Gaming taking on Ultra Prime. Everyone knows I'm pretty much the biggest Ultra Prime fan probably on the platform in terms of what I see as potential for this roster. But this was an example of why maybe that isn't the case, because Weibo obliterated them. This was a really clean 2-0 from Weibo Gaming. Can we all just be happy about that? I think that in itself is something to cheer for, but let's go ahead and talk about it. Huanfeng was really, really good in this one. That Twitch game was really disgusting. I mean, he was like two-shotting people as Twitch in that late game. Twitch Yuumi is one of those lanes that I've really been sold on. Like, I'm all in on Twitch Yuumi as an analyst. Like, pick it. It really seems like just, especially, you can let Zeri through. Who needs to ban Zeri when you can pick Twitch Yuumi? It really just doesn't seem like it's a problem at all to deal with that. It would be something I'd be worried about the other team picking. You know, I just think it's really, really strong. And Huanfeng and On show that in this one. Really the thing I want to talk about with On is I think a lot of people are talking about like, oh, is On actually better than Sword Art? Yes. Like, absolutely. It's not even, no, I don't mean to say this in a flame kind of way, but like, it's not even close. And I don't mean that to say, like, Sword Art's bad. I mean to say that, like, On is, like, really, really good. He is a really, really good support. I think you could make a real argument that he is the best player on this team, on this Weibo Gaming team. He's been phenomenal for them all year long. He was really good for them in spring as well. Just really good. The Shy had a phenomenal game here in Game 2 on the Gnar. You don't really see Gnars take over games like this, but he certainly did. Shout out the Shy. Pretty much clapped Zoom, who's continuing his downward trend. As for Ultra Prime, I really want this roster to be good. Zoom, Cryan, and Elk should be good. Like, a team of those three players should be good, but they're like right on the precipice of being alright, and then they get blown out by Weibo Gaming, and it's like, come on, you know? So, Hacker's easily my dud of the series, and he's the dud of the team, and I hate saying that, but like, if they had a better jungler, I think they would be doing a lot better. Hacker, I don't want to flame him because I've actually been really high on Hacker. If you go and look at the historical opinion of this channel, Hacker and Xiaoxi have been two of my favorite players in the LPL for quite a while. I just don't think that they are up to the same quality that you need to be top 10 in the LPL right now. Like, they just have never been able to turn the corner from being people that are inconsistent to kind of distilling that into something where they're able to perform well in every game. That's just not what we've been getting out of Hacker, and it really, really shows. And it showed in this one. He was just out-jungled by SOFM, and was not good. There's really no other way to put it. Not good. But, you know, not everybody on this team was good. Zoom didn't have a great series either. Xiaoxi didn't have a great series. Really not much to talk about. Elk got counterpicked pretty hard in Game 1, and then in Game 2 was just, it was a scaling matchup that they didn't scale on. Cryan was not good, etc., etc. Ultra Prime just didn't show up in this one. I still think that there is a potential that they're, like, sneaky top 10, but I don't know where I would put them in my power rankings right now. Weibo is definitely looking good. I don't think they look dominant, but they look good. Again, I think they're in that same cluster as, like, LNG and Bilibili. Like, they're teams that I expect to be in the playoffs, but I'm not sure if they're, like, actually title contenders. So, we'll end up seeing this is a very good start. And if the Shy continues to play well, obviously it's going to work. Obviously, no one expects the Shy to play well every series at this point. He's going to have some series where he runs it and some series where he's good, but Huanfeng and Ong are really turning into, like, one of the better bot lanes in the LPL, and if they can continue that trajectory, then this team's going to be pretty good. Moving on here to day 4 of week 4 LPL action, we got our first actual 3-game series of the week, which was BLG, Bilibili Gaming, taking on Invictus Gaming. A BLG win. They should win this, but it was... I'll say it's close because they won game 2, but it wasn't particularly close. Games 1 and 3 were pretty in favor of BLG the entire time. Let's go ahead and talk about BLG. They've looked super inconsistent all year long. They've already swapped out their mid laner. As you can see, Icon is in there instead of Fofo. And I think a lot of people are going to dislike this decision because I think Fofo is popular because of his performance last year, but I'm going to be honest, like, he was really awful in playoffs, and every single game that they have lost in summer so far is because of Fofo. And so I'm all in on them just giving a shot to Icon, who has been really good in the past, obviously. You know, just give him a chance to be better, and he was actually pretty good in this series. His game 1 on the Silas was probably the reason they won that game, so I expect to see more Icon from this BLG team. I do think he's probably more stable right now for this team and kind of what more of what they need, I should say, than Fofo. But obviously, if Icon starts to struggle, you have two mid laners that have proven to be all-pro caliber in the past. So, but let's not skip over talking about Chris for too much longer. Like, don't give him Renata. I think we're just at the point where it's like you can't give him Renata. He was too good in this series on that champion. He was dominant. He's easily my player of the series here for BLG. He was phenomenal. Crisp has been someone who I've been really high on for a long time. Everybody knows that. Doggo has definitely looked like the weak point of this lane, but it almost doesn't matter because Crisp is so good that he wins a lot of laning phases for this BLG team basically on his own. He's definitely one of the better supports in the world. And then Weiwei, I thought, had a pretty good series here. Obviously, 3 games of Viego. How much can you really say he played well? But, yeah, jokes aside, his macro's gotten a lot better. He's really opened up the map a lot more. Him and Crisp, I think, have developed a really good synergy, like a roaming synergy together. And they have done a really good job of controlling the map, making sure they have vision, and then essentially just getting every objective, taking advantage of overextensions. They just do a really good job of maintaining pressure pretty much everywhere. This BLG team looked pretty good in this one. It's against a worse team, which you would hope to see, but, you know, it's still a good look for them. As for Invictus Gaming, what is this roster? Like, I just don't get it. Like, you have 2 supports that have played well, one of them in the LPL and the other in the LDL, one of the better LDL supports. You have Jinlu, who, of course, formerly Lucas, and then you have Ke, who has been like the best LDL support, and you decide to play neither. You decide to play 2 AD carries. You bring On in here to play AD carry, essentially. And then you have Wink play support, who neither of these two have played well all year long. On was really bad in this series. There's really no other way to put it. Wink hasn't been much better all year long. On's my dud of the series here, but you could have given it to Wink as well. I think both were not good. It's really just about preference at that point. I don't get it. I just don't understand the decision to run with On here when you have 2, like I said, good supports. So, whatever. Yukai and Jun are perma-trapped. Jun more, obviously, is like perma-trapped on this team. Just not much Invictus Gaming can do here. Zika and Yukai are fine. Yukai, I think, has shown like flashes of being really good and also flashes of just being like average. And Zika's just fine. He's whatever. But yeah, I think Jun feels pretty perma-trapped here. And then I don't get this bot lane decision at all. I don't think it's explainable. And I hope they don't continue to do this because I don't see them getting any better doing this. So, yeah, you know, shout out to IG for winning a game here. I think they're going to be happy with that. BLG is going to be happy taking in the series. And they're going to be happy to say, all right, well, we're going to be pushing, like I said, I've said this 1,000 times, that cluster of LNG, Weibo Gaming, effort like that. We're a playoff team, but can we kind of go a tier up into not being just a playoff team, but an actual contender? BLG wants to get into that area. I just don't know if they're in that right now. And then IG's not a playoff team. Like, this team is just not good right now. They have too much to figure out. They're going to be in that bottom cluster with the other teams that I've mentioned. So hopefully they can turn it around. June perma-trapped, but it is what it is. Moving on to the second series here of Day 4, we had RNG, our MSI representative from the LPL, taking on OMG. RNG is able to take the win after dropping Game 1, but Games 2 and 3 were not particularly close. A good series here from RNG just in general. This is the first time I get to talk about them on the channel since they won MSI. Congrats to them. Obviously, Spring Xiaohu, phenomenal. I'm just kidding. Gala and Ming are one of the best bot lanes in the world. It is undisputable at this point. If you want to take Ming, if you want to take Keria, that's really your debate for best support in the world at this point. It's one or the other. Like, I don't know. They're both so phenomenal in their own region. You know, take your pick. I'm a little biased towards Ming at the moment. He's played better in summer. Keria probably was a little better in spring. It's really, honestly, what's the point in even saying? It's up to you. Ming's player of the series. He was so freaking good here on the Nautilus. Those plays were really, really oppressive to deal with. Really difficult to deal with, just in general. Gala played super duper well here on the Jinx in Game 3. And, you know, Senatom Kench, while there isn't a ton of, like, quote-unquote skill expression in that lane, there still is a lot of impact that you can have on the game, and they were still really, really important there. So Gala and Ming, really the focal points for RNG in this series here. Really, really good one from them. Breathe coming in here in the top lane, I think it's a pretty big upgrade. Breathe has just been better than Bin. There's really not much else to say. It's that simple. He wasn't quite great in game 1 on the Gnar, but at least he was like trying to make plays. And then in games 2 and 3, he was like super solid. He had a phenomenal game 3 here on the Gnar. Looked really good. I just think this RNG team, a lot of people were, I think, expecting them to be a little bit, the post-MSI hangover, I think a lot of people were expecting them to be maybe a little quieter. And yes, they've already dropped a series, but it was to arguably the best team in the LPL right now, Victory 5. And so, RNG still looks really, really good. They beat OMG here, who was really on their A game, I think, for the most part. Aki had a phenomenal game 1 here on the Lee Sin. And then Cream in game 3 on the Akali was absolutely trying his best to win the game for them. Those two players, I think, have shown that they are kind of the backbone of OMG. Yes, you could say that the Akali pick in game 3 wasn't a great one, which I agree with, and neither was the Trundle. I don't think people are talking about that nearly enough. The Trundle pick wasn't a good one as well, especially into Wukong. Trundle into Wukong is pretty troll, but yeah, Akali into TF is a bad matchup. There's really no other way to put it. TF can ult and see you in Shroud, and it kind of ruins you in teamfights, so oops. But still, Cream was doing a lot of damage. He was really the focal point for that team in game 3, and he was doing well. And Aki, like I said, was a big reason they won that game in game 1 on the Lee Sin. But the bot lane's just not holding up right now. Abel's been meh. Like, he's not making a ton of mistakes, but he's not being as takeover dominant as he was in spring. And Cold was just not good in this series. He's going to be my dud of the series. He got support gapped here pretty hard by Ming. Just not a great one here. 2 games of Braum. It's hard to look like phenomenal on that, but he certainly didn't. He did not look great. And then the Rel game, I think Rel is just like a trap pick right now. I don't think Rel is particularly phenomenal. Yes, Rel does the one thing that Rel does, which I guess is the same as it's always been, but I don't know. I would just rather have I'd rather have something else. I'd rather have Nautilus if it's on the board, which in that game I think it was. So, whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, Cold's my player of this, or my dud of the series. Ming is my player of the series. RNG looks still really good. They're one of the best teams in the region. Like I said, that top 3 feels pretty solidified in my mind right now. I should say top 4, because Victory 5 is definitely in that as well, of RNG, Top Esports, JD Gaming, and of course Victory 5, I think are clearly like the 4 best teams. OMG might be a playoff team. I think they'd be happy to be a playoff team, but right now I expect them probably closer to be on the outside looking in. Cream and Aki do show promise, but they definitely don't show sustainability, so hopefully they can get some more sustainable performances out of their jungle mid duo. They're 2 interesting players, and then the rest, I think, Abel needs to get back to that form. Shanji needs to finally start developing, and Cold obviously being here for the shot calling is great, but he just hasn't been able to actually play at the highest level in quite a while. So it'll be interesting to see where OMG goes from here. That's going to let us jump into day 5 here. That was kicked off with EDG, Edward Gaming, taking on TT Gaming. EDG taking the 2-0 win here, as they should, but certainly not as clean as it should have been. This really should have been an EDG-dominated game. TT looks probably like the worst team in the league right now, and it was not. Honestly, ThunderTalk had a pretty good early game. They just have no idea how to turn those early games into late-game leads, which we just saw most of the time. They just got outscaled in both games, really. Mostly game 2, but still both games, and it's unfortunate. I will say, I'll try to edit this out, but if you guys hear any sort of like noise in the background of this video, like a dog barking or, just general kid screaming noises, it's 4th of July, everybody's outside. I'll try to edit out as much of this background noise as I can, but just want to let you know if you hear anything that I apologize. I've done my best. Yes, EDG looked alright here. This team just doesn't have the fire that you would want them to have. They don't look like the defending world champions. They don't have that same kind of spark, that same kind of aggression. Flandre is my player of the series here. He played really well, but he's had some games this year where he's also played absolutely nothing at all, right? I think really the only consistent member of this team so far this year has been JJ. JJ's been really good pretty much all year long, and he was the member I think I was most concerned about going into the year with that hangover, and he has certainly not had it. He has been really consistently good for this EDG team. Viper's been good for the most part as well, but like Scout and Mako just sometimes have games where they're not good. Mako, I would have told you, was like the best support in the world going into the year. He certainly has not played like it this year, but Scout looks good in this one as well. Flandre and Scout, I think, both have good series. Flandre has an especially good game on the Gnar in Game 1, but even the Gangplank game in Game 2 was still pretty good for EDG. I just want more consistency out of that team. They looked good here, but, you know, it's Thunder Talk. Of course you have to look good, and you lost early game, and you're playing Thunder Talk. So, like, I just want more consistency. As for TT, this roster sucks. They try to bring in Hoya here. Obviously, former Damwon top laner, former Fred Brion top laner. He's fine. He's whatever. I don't know if he's going to help you. Like, I don't know if he's better or worse for you than anybody else, you know, than Xiaoshang is on this roster. But Beishuan is going to be my dud of the series here. I was just hyping him up in the series earlier. He checked out in this one. He had some good early games, especially here in the Game 2 on the Viego, but just no transitioning that into anything at all in the late game. Just kind of tore it apart. That Game 1 on the Wukong was really, really rough. Not really a very good one here for Beishuan, but nobody on this team looks good. Honestly, Beishuan was the one member of this team that I thought looked good for most of this year, and he had a bad series here. When he's not playing well, I don't think this team has even a remote chance of winning games. I don't think UCal can win you games. I certainly don't think Puff and Southwind can win you games, and then this top lane situation, like, whatever. Like, figure out who you're going to play, and I still don't think either of them are going to win you games. But, yeah, Thunder Talk just seems like the worst team in the league. There's really no other way to put it. And I hate to just be that pessimistic towards them, but that is what it feels like at this point. Good for EDG to take the series here, but at the end of the day, you should be winning 2-0 against Thunder Talk, and you hope for more consistency out of EDG, because you want them to be back at Worlds, but right now I don't know if they have the confidence, if they have the mentality to be able to do that. Moving on to our second series here of Day 5, we had Anyone's Legend, who have surprised a lot of people at the beginning of this year, including me, taking on Victory 5 in a really close 2-1 series, like a really close 2-1 series. Anyone's Legend and Victory 5 trade wins in Games 1 and 2, and then Game 3 was really, really close. Both teams going back and forth. Anyone's Legend had the lead early, or I should say Victory 5 had the lead early, and then Anyone's Legend kind of with a really big comeback here in the mid-game to kind of take control, and then V5 takes control back in the late game. A really, really fun one. This is probably my game of the week. I would recommend checking out Game 3 of Anyone's Legend versus Victory 5. A very, very fun one, but a really good look from Victory 5 here, and especially from Fodic. Easily player of the series. What a Game 3 here on the Zeri. I mean, that was nuts. The Kalista here on the Game 2 was nuts. Really, it was just the Game 1 against Betty's Kalista that wasn't ideal, but still, Fodic was so good in this series, easily the best player for Victory 5, and he's really, like, on his A-game this year. Him and PP God have developed a really nice synergy. They brought Karsa out for this series, and PP God and Karsa, I think, do have good synergy together. I think it's a big reason why they feel more comfortable playing Karsa against opponents they're a little bit more worried about. It's because I think him and PP God have a little bit more synergy, but Fodic, like, was just really, really good. There was really nothing else to say. He has looked good all year long, and he was phenomenal in this series. Dream has also played really, really well. It's pretty crazy. Victory 5 is undefeated without their MVP mid laner, and that is pretty insane to say. And I don't want that to be, like, down on Rookie. I really do want that to be an up on Dream, who has just played really, really well. He's been one of the better mid laners in all of the LPL so far this year. And absolutely no one could have seen that coming. He has been really, really, really solid for this Victory 5 team. But so is everybody. Like I said, PP God played really well here. Karsa ran it a little bit. We're not going to talk about that. He died a lot. Some of them were worth it. Some of them weren't. But still, obviously the synergy that he adds to the team is good. And then Rich has just been a constant presence. He's fine. He was good in this one. As for Anyone's Legend, this team is way better. Way, way, way better than I expected them to be. And I think way better than a lot of people expected them to be. They should be a playoff team. Like, they have pushed not only everybody that they've played really hard, but they've won a lot of series that I don't think a lot of people expected them to win. They kind of fill that role of like I feel like there's 9 teams that should make playoffs or that like definitely should make playoffs in the LPL, and then there's that one spot. It really feels like that one spot is anyone's legend right now, but unfortunately for this one, they couldn't pull it out. ZDZ is going to be my dud of the series here. He just didn't accomplish anything. That Kale game in game 2 was irrelevant. Like, a Kale and a Gnar is just a really tough matchup for Kale, and the Kale did nothing. And that was that was probably one of the more, like, irrelevant, quote-unquote, games of the series. His game 3 on the Camille didn't accomplish much either. Just not much happening in the top lane, but really can't take that away from him too much. You know who is really good is Chocho. Like, Chocho's actually phenomenal. And Amumu, I've talked about this on a channel, is a pick that I really don't like. I don't think is very good in the meta right now. I think it's very much a bit of a bait pick for a lot of teams, but this is how you play Amumu. Like, I know they lost in game 3, but this game 1 on Amumu was phenomenal, and this game 3 on Amumu was honestly really solid. Like, there were many times where Chocho's Amumu ults pretty much should have won this team the game, but Photic is actually just too cracked, too good. So unfortunately weren't able to do that. Betty also had a pretty good series here, a really good game 1 here on the Callista, and was doing a lot in those team fights. So was Forge. Like I said, I think everybody on Anyone's Legend played well in the series. I think Victory 5 was just the better team. And that's you know, nothing to scoff at. They could be the best team in the LPL. So definitely nothing to scoff at, but a good series from Anyone's Legend. Hopefully both of these teams make playoffs, because I think both of them have played like playoff teams so far this year. Obviously, Anyone's Legend doesn't have the record to show for it right now, but hopefully they will, you know, relatively soon. Victory 5, though, on the other hand, might just be the best team in the LPL, and that is without Rookie. So I can't even imagine, you know, if Rookie comes back in here and they start to show their summer form, like their spring form, you know, that's going to be a little bit of a question mark, because Dream has been phenomenal, and this team has looked better than they did in spring, and they were the #1 team in spring. Jumping into our super day of the week here, day 6. We kicked off our first of 3 series on the day with LNG taking on LGD. If there is a series all year that I tell you guys to not watch and that doesn't accurately represent the LPL, this is it. This series sucked. The series sucked on so many levels. There were so many things in this series that I hated. Let's get to them. Let's get to LNG first. They take game 1. 30 minutes, crush them. Not even close. Looks like it's going to be an easy series. LGD takes game 2, a very close one. Takes forever. This one's kind of fun, but at the same time, still kind of weh. And then game 3 is a game of League. Goes 56 minutes. No one's doing any damage. It's something. Both teams don't know what macro is. Like, this was not a good look for LNG in win. They do win here, but it's not a great look for them. LGD is not a particularly great team. I don't think they're like the worst team in the league, but they're not a particularly great team here. And they barely win this series, like barely. You know, if Jinzhao doesn't make like this awful throw in the late game, and if Chalizi actually builds on Kale, you know, I think LGD wins this one pretty easily, like almost no-brainer easily, but you know, we're not sitting here talking about an LGD win. We're talking about an LNG win. And LNG won. Doenb is going to be my player of the series. He at least played well. I thought he was proactive, and he had, you know, good Talia ults in game 3 and was trying to do things. His game 1 on Sylas was good. Even his game on Azir was pretty good. He wasn't the problem, and I think that is good. As for dud of the series, I'm going to pull out the rare card here, because dud of the series was a Wandy. He was the worst player on both teams in this series, and that's really unfortunate to say, because I don't know, a lot of people have been hyping up a Wandy and waiting for this Wandy like breakout explosion because people weren't happy with Lumao, and I get it, like Lumao wasn't playing particularly great. This was not a good series from Wandy. They would have been better off with Lumao in this one pretty easily. His game 2 was atrociously bad. And his game 3 was honestly pretty atrociously bad. There was honestly no explaining how not good he was for the last couple games here. But LNG is able to pull out the win. As for LGD, like I said, this is their series to win. Like, they lost this. It wasn't so much LNG won this. LGD lost this. If Chalizi, who, by the way, is in top lane now instead of Fearness, sure, like, Chalizi hasn't played in, what, like a year and a half since he played for Thunder Talk, so He wasn't good when he played back then, but sure, if you want to bring him in, if you saw something in scrims, great. He actually played the games pretty well. Like, other than game 1 where he got, like, roasted on Ornn, he was awful. He played game 2 well on the Gwen, and he was really ahead on Kayle in that game 3 into Gnar, which is a bad matchup. And then he builds full AD. He builds Kraken Slayer, he builds Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge, Wit's End, Shurelya's, like, it's not even crit. It's just AD. It's AD Kayle. And I don't think I could think of a build that did less. Like, this, like you watched it. Like, we got 56 minutes into the game. We got level 18 on Kayle. And guess what Kayle wasn't doing? Damage. And that's a problem. That's not good. That's a real not good situation to be in. I think if he builds AP items, this game is no-brainer won by LGD. Jinjiao thankfully puts us all out of our misery with that weird Amumu play towards the end of game 3. Just loses it. He's the dud of the series because he didn't play well. He really was probably the dud of the series, but Awandi I honestly thought played worse. So Awandi is going to get it, but you want to give it to Jinjiao, like, that's fine too. I'm going to give it to Awandi, but you could give it to Jinjiao. Haichao played game 1, got beat up by Doanbi as everybody does, and then they switched out for Yeji in game 2, and he actually played really well on the Galio in game 2. Like I said, Yeji's one of those players that he's the support mid laner. He's going to pick Galio, he's going to pick Lissandra, he's going to pick these things that are more, like, I don't know, not carries. He's not the carry player. That's not what you're going to be getting out of him, but he actually played really well in game 2 on that Galio, opened up a lot of the map for LGD. A big reason why they won that game was those Galio engages late and the protection that he was able to give them. So, yeah, they're probably going to run with Yeji for the rest of the year, or at least for a while, I would expect. I think he is the better player. And then if they want to run with Chalizi, great. Like, I think he looked pretty good here. Fearness, I think, has his ups and downs, so whatever you want to run with there is your decision. But LGD's just kind of meh. They're probably, like, near the top of these bad teams. And, you know, that's saying something, but it's not saying a lot. As for LNG, they're going to be so thankful to come out of the series with a win because they don't, I'm not going to say they don't deserve it, but they really shouldn't have won this. They won this because LGD didn't want to win, not because LNG wanted to win. So, you know, good for LNG to come out of this with a win, but honestly, not the best showing in the world from a team that had already been asking questions going into this series. Our second series here of day 6 was FPX taking on JD Gaming. FPX actually able to knock off JDG. A huge win here for FunPlus Phoenix. And I'm not going to say it's because of North America, but I'm going to imply that it's because of North America because they go down 1-0. JDG takes game 1 here, and then who comes in the top lane? The NA MVP for Spring Split, Summit, and FPX wins the next 2 games. Bravo, done and dusted, easy peasy, series over. Summit's the best player in the world. NA's the best region in the world, no question. Of course, that's what I mean. And we're going to talk about the rest of the team just because we have to, you know, for you know, posterity's sake. But Clid was really, really good in this one. There's really nothing else to talk about. I mean, Clid and Care. Clid and Care, I think, both had really phenomenal series here. This is easily Care's best series of the year. And Clid actually looked pretty good in this one, too. Clid's going to be my player of the series here for FPX. He was really fun to watch that game 3 on Viego. He just kind of took over late game. Not much that JDG was able to do. When Kanavi gets out jungled, JDG tends to lose because a lot of their strategy runs around Kanavi, like, having complete map control. And Clid did a really good job of taking that away in this one. He was really proactive on the Lee Sin and on the Viego in order to make sure that Kanavi wasn't able to just do whatever he wanted. You know, Care was able to roam on that Galio a lot in game 3, and he did a lot of damage in that game 2 on the Ahri. Just overall, a really good series here from FPX. Summit came in and was actually really good here. He played the Gragas in game 1, and then the Kayle in game 2, or in game, he played the Gragas in game 2, and the Kayle in game 3 here, and was really, really good. Honestly, one of the better players of the series. If Summit can come in and play like this, if he can actually be like the dominant top lane player that I think a lot of people saw out of like Sandbox Summit, then this is going to be like a really good FPX team. We're just hoping you don't get like NA Summit where if you throw literally any amount of gank attention his way, he's going to die to it no matter what. Like, he's just never prepared to get ganked. Hopefully it's not that Summit. This FPX team just looked really good here. For them to win without having to rely on their bottom lane, I think is a really phenomenal sign for this team, because this is a team that has historically, at least, needed their bottom lane to win. Like, LWX has kind of been the focal point for this FPX team, but he was kind of the afterthought in this series, and they still were able to take to knock 2 games off of the undefeated JDG. So really good look here for them. As for JDG, I don't think it's like end of the world, like, you know, throw it away, everything's doomed, whatever, right? I just think that this is definitely not the series you were hoping for. I'm gonna give dud of the series to Yagao. Kanavi did not play super well, especially in Game 2, but he was so good in Game 1. I had a really hard time giving dud of the series to him, so it is gonna go to Yagao here, who didn't really accomplish anything. Like, he was a non-factor on the Zoe. He got outplayed by Care in both games. And then the Victor was whatever, right? Like, he was wave clear. So, just generally speaking, this isn't the JDG that we had seen. And like I said, a lot of that goes back to the fact that I think Kanavi really needs to have the map open for him to really play the style that he wants to play. When he doesn't have freedom to roam around and do whatever he wants, he can get a little bit stuck. And Klid took that away, and JDG struggled. I don't think this is the end of the world or anything for them, but I think this is more just a really good win for FPX. I think they're going to be very excited that they were able to pull this one off. And JDG is going to be upset that they weren't able to pick off FPX, but looking at FPX's upcoming schedule after this, it's pretty much all bottom teams. We could really see a run of like 5 or 6 wins in a row from this FPX team, really bouncing back, especially if Summit continues to make this team better. So it'll be interesting to see where FPX goes from here. I don't think it's too bad for JDG, but you hope to see them get back on track with you know, hopefully getting their confidence back in the next series. Moving on to the last series here of day 6, at least, we have Weibo Gaming taking on Top Esports. A 2-1 win here for Top. This is a very, very good win for them. Obviously, it's always good when 2 teams that are playoff expectations play off against each other. We can kind of get more of an idea of where they are. And Top looked really good in this one. Weibo looked good for the most part, but man, if it wasn't for a couple of throws here or there, they probably had this series, which is sad to say, but a very, very close one here. We'll talk about Top first. Knight's just good, isn't he? Like, is there really anything else to say at this point? He's been the best player in the LPL by far in summer, in my opinion. He's just dominated pretty much every laning phase that he's had, and he's been able to translate that into really strong late games as well. He had a phenomenal game 1 here on the Taliyah. A Taliyah pick that he has actually proven to be super efficient on. And then a really good game 3 laning phase on Victor into Corki. A laning phase that I think is usually pretty passive. Like, he just straight up outplayed Angel for a majority of that game. So a really good series here from Knight. And then I also think Jackie Love, obviously, you could talk about the Chad plays that he makes. We talked about it earlier in the week. He's either going to win you the game or lose you the game with those plays, but he certainly is going to make those plays, flash in and try to win the fight by himself. And in this one, he definitely does that, and it works out for him. You know, he has a really good game 3 here on the Zeri. Definitely something that we've seen out of him a couple times this year. He played it really well into the Twitch. Obviously, I've talked about how Twitch Yuumi is a pretty good counter pick to Zeri, but in this one, the Zeri was just the better player, so it was a little bit difficult. Everybody else on the team played fine. I think Wayward is, like, fine. He came in and he was good. I think he's good. I think he's like a mid-tier top laner in the LPL, and I think that's exactly what this team needs. They have so many carries on this roster already. Knight is a carry, Jackie Love's a carry, Tion can carry, but he's got more of a supportive mentality now, and then Mark is really aggressive as a support. I think having that more steady top laner in Wayward has been really good for them, especially when they go into a more carry-oriented top laner in the Shy, who straight up just ran it, I think, for a lot of this series. There was a lot of the series that was not good from the Shy. There's really nothing else to say about that. He's my dud of the series. That game 3 where he just Orn-E's into 5 men on TES and dies immediately, like, I don't know. I don't know what the point is. Game 1 was certainly questionable as well with the Kayle ults. Just not a good series overall from the Shy. But not a good series from Angel either. Just kind of meh. Huanfeng got outplayed in Game 3 by Jackie Love. Not that he had a bad series, just got outplayed. Overall, TES is the better team. And maybe if Weibo cleaned up some of their edges, they would have won the series. But at the end of the day, like, that's what Weibo is, right? Weibo is the Shy. You know, they have the Shy. They're going to play like this. They have, you know, when you go against Jackie Love, you either have to be, you have to try to make those plays, and the Shy tried to make them, and they didn't work. Jack Love tried to make those plays, and they did work, and that's why TS won the series. So, I want to give this to Top. I think it's a very, very good series for them. They are clearly one of the best teams in the world. I think at this point, it's really indisputable, and I'm really happy to say that because I really am a pretty big fan of this roster. As for Weibo, like I said, the edges are what needs cleaning up, but I don't know if those are ever going to get clean with this roster. Like, this is just a roster that plays like this. When you have a roster that plays around Huanfeng and the Shy, you're going to have times where you're just not clicking. And that's what we're seeing here with Weibo. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I don't know if they're going to be a Worlds team. I certainly wouldn't bet on it at this point, but, you know, things can turn around and hopefully they can figure it out. But for Top, like, this is one of the best teams in the world. I hope they can continue to prove that week in and week out. All right, finally jumping into the final day, day 7 of Week 4 LPL action. We kick that off with Rare Adam taking on Team WE, a battle of two teams that have just really struggled to get it going at the beginning of the season here, and that continues, for WE at least. Rare Adam is going to take the series at 2-1. Closer than you would have hoped it would have been, but Game 3 was pretty much a stomp. Let's go ahead and talk about what Rare Adam did well. These solo laners are really good, and they're proving why they were a playoff team in spring, because these solo laners have really showed up. Cube and Strive, Cube especially, like, this is some confidence, if you want to talk about it. Blind picking Jax 3 games in a row. Just saying, I know you have nothing to stop it. I know you have nothing to beat me, and they didn't. They really, really didn't. He's my player of the series here. He was really, really good. That kind of confidence is exactly what you want to see out of your top laner. Good for Cube. And then Strive was really good in the series as well. He's shown a lot of improvement throughout the year so far, and I actually like his development track on being one of the being a good LPL mid laner. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be one of the best, but I think he's a good LPL mid laner. 2 really good games of Twisted Fate. The Rise kind of sprinkled in the middle there, which, of course, I'm not a huge fan of, but it was a good, he did play well on it, so hard to take away from them. Really, Rare Adam's weakness this entire season has been their bot lane. Aibo and Yuyanja have just been kind of meh. They just don't synergize particularly well together. Yuyanja had a pretty good Game 3 on the Nautilus, but Nautilus seems like a really strong pick generally right now. And Aibo just really has never found his footing on this Rare Adam team, even going back to last year. It just seems like he's always been kind of meh here. And hopefully he can figure it out. Him and Yuyanja just, I'm not sure if that's the duo of the future. But Leon was fine, like I said. Yuyanja was good in Game 3, but Games 1 and 2 were certainly questionable. As for WE, this team sucks. Like, there's really no other way to put it. This is probably the worst team in the LPL. Bubu is going to get my dud of the series here because he played into a blind pick Jax 3 games in a row and lost 3 games in a row, which is just like, it's almost embarrassing. Like, I don't really know how you do that. You pick Sejuani the first couple times, okay, you're just going to get run over. Like, I don't get that pick. You pick Gnar, which is something I do think can play into it in Game 3, and that works out even worse. Like, that is, like, almost just as bad. So, just not a good series here from Bubu. He has been arguably the worst player in the LPL in the year of 2022. Just not good. Not good, not good, not good. He used to be that feast or famine top laner on good teams. Now he's the famine top laner. Like, I can't remember the last time Bubu genuinely just had a good game. Really, if you're looking for positives, it's going to come from your carry roles here. Shanks and SMLZ at least played. Like, SMLZ and Shanks had a good game too in their win. They were a big reason why they won that one, but both of them had very questionable games outside of that. I do still believe that Shanks has some potential here to be a good mid laner. He was really good in the playoffs last year. He makes some really good plays, but he also makes some really bad plays. So it's just about limiting those mistakes and trying to capitalize on the good ideas that you do have. As for SMLZ, you know what you're going to get with him. He's going to be okay in lane, and then, you just hope to God he doesn't throw it away in team fights like he did in Games 1 and Game 3. So, this WE team just doesn't have a lot of hope. There's really not a lot of, they've been swapping their roster around, and nobody's looked particularly better than the rest. They're just kind of blah. Like, these are 2 bottom teams in the LPL. There's really nothing else to say. Good on Rare Adam for being able to pick up a win here. They certainly need it to try and rebuild some confidence on a beginning of the season that has just been pretty much disastrous for this team. But WE is that's exactly what you need to run into when you are struggling on confidence. Is a World Elite team that is ready to hand you that confidence back. And so good for Rare Adam. I don't think either of these teams really changed much in my mind after the series. Both of them are still not great looking, but at least Rare Adam was able to pick up a win here. That's going to bring us to our final series here of Week 4 LPL action, and that was Ultra Prime taking on RNG. A 2-0 win here for RNG. It was never really that close. This is where you just type in chat bot gap after the game is over, because holy crap, is RNG's bot lane just really good. That, I've been someone who has sang the praises of Ultra Prime's bot lane. Elk and Xiaoxi, I think, have been pretty underrated throughout the year of 2022, but holy crap, Gala and Ming are just like a different level. You want to give either of them player of the series, great. I'm going to give it to Gala. Gala was so good here. 18-0 and 19, I really think that says it all, but like, pentakill, whatever, right? Like, you could talk about whatever with this RNG bot lane. You could just say, all right, they were better. And they were better by a lot. They were the driving force of this series. Breathe also had a good series. I don't want to take that away from him here, especially on the Fiora in Game 2. But, Gala was just nuts. Gala was absolutely nuts this entire series, and Ming was pretty nuts this entire series as well. Not really much else to talk about on that front. Wei and Xiaohu were there. Like, they were good. I don't want to say that they didn't play well, but, like, they were certainly in the background compared to Breathe, Gala, and Ming. RNG just has so many avenues that they can play through that it's really easy for them to just, like, you can have world-class players like Wei and Zhao who just be, like, backseat players any game that you want, and that's what happened here. Pretty dominant here from the bot lane, and on the other side, Ultra Prime's bot lane got pretty hard outclassed. Xiaoxi is going to be my dud of the series here. I'm a pretty big Xiaoxi fan. I've talked about that pretty numerously on this channel. Elk is probably the most underrated player in the LPL, but this just certainly was not the day for them. They got pretty hard destroyed. Xiaoxi was not on his A game. I don't love the Leona pick. Like I said, I think Leona's pretty trash in the meta right now. Certainly overrated, at least compared to a lot of other supports in the meta that they could go for right now. Especially if you're trading it for Nautilus, which is just the better version. And then you get the Nautilus in Game 2, and you don't really change much. You're going into Braum, which is like a really tough matchup for Nautilus in general, and just bleh. It's really bleh for this bot lane. It's pretty doomed. So, the top side of the map wasn't great, but it's not like it really mattered. Like, bot side lost hard enough, I think, for the entire team. But just generally speaking, RNG really outclassed them, really just outpaced them, was just better from front to back, top to bottom, however you want to say it. I don't think this changes anything for RNG. They're still one of the best teams in the world. I think pretty much no question. That loss to Victory 5 seems like a distant memory now. And then for Ultra Prime, like, they have some convincing to do to convince me that they're still, like, in that playoff conversation. On paper, they absolutely should be, or at least they can be, I think, with Zoom, Cryan, Elk, Xiaoxi. Like, I think these are all good players, but they just haven't come together in the way that I think a lot of people would have hoped that they would at the beginning of the year. Well, I guess maybe not a lot of people, that I hoped that they would come together at the beginning of the year. I was really hoping that this Ultra Prime team was going to be kind of the sleeper pick, but so far they've just kind of been exactly what we expected, kind of in that 10 to 12 range, that just outside of playoff range team that will beat the bad ones and lose to the good ones, etc., etc. So, that looks to be the spot that they're settling into, but RNG, one of the best teams in the world. Obviously, I shouldn't have to say that. You already knew it. Everyone already knew it. This just proves it even more so. They are really freaking good. And that is going to do it for my Week 4 LPL recap and analysis. It is Power Rankings time. Up on your screen right now, you are going to see the new and improved LPL version of the Power Rankings. It is going to be listing the Week 4 standings. It's got their record, it's got their streak, it's got their everything. Hopefully it looks a lot better as well. I actually think this looks really awesome. Shout out to the people who helped me make this. It looks phenomenal. You'll see my power ranking number is going to be listed as the first column, as well as how those power rankings have changed directly next to that. So this gives you an idea of maybe some underdog, dark horse, teams that are a little bit better than what they seem in record, or maybe some teams that are a little bit worse than what they seem in record. You can have a team like LNG be ranked 6th, where I have them as the 8th best team, and you have a team like RNG be 5th, where I have them as number 2 in my power ranking. So let's go ahead and go over the biggest risers and the biggest fallers. The biggest riser this week in my power rankings is FPX, jumping up from 11 last week in my power rankings to 9 in my power rankings this week. So going from 11 to 9 is a pretty good change, I would say. They're right back in the conversation. If they have a good week next week, I'm actually really tempted to put them as high as 6 this week. So really, like, genuinely, they could be as high as 5 or 6 next week. I don't really know. Let's see if they have a good one, but a really promising bounce back week here for FPX. We have some ties for biggest fallers this week. We have LNG falling from 6 to 8. Yeah, they didn't have a good week. They should not have beat LGD. They really shouldn't have. Their games were pretty back and forth, and their wins were kind of not their own. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully they can turn that around. And then Ultra Prime does fall down as well. They had a really tough week. Yes, it was a tough schedule, but also that team just they haven't been playing up to expectations. And until they do, I'm not going to be super sold on whether or not to put them into my top 10. So right now, they're back out of the playoffs here at number 11. But let's go ahead and go over my player of the week and my dud of the week. My player of the week is pretty no shocker, going to go to Knight. This is the second one he's received already this year, as he got one for week 2 as well. He has been so phenomenal for Top Esports. The best player in the league by far, in my opinion. Just really, really dominant. Top had a great week, and Knight was the big reason because of that. My dud of the week, unfortunately, is going to go to Xiaoxi on Ultra Prime. Like I just said with Ultra Prime, they're kind of not gelling in the way that I wanted, and Xiaoxi had a rough week. So he is going to be, unfortunately, my dud of the week for week 4, but that is going to do it. That's going to wrap up my week 4 analysis. If you guys enjoyed it, please go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below, and leave a like if you made it this far. It really does help the channel a lot more than you probably know, and I'm really appreciative of that. But anyways, I hope you are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all later.